Michelle Kirton, MEPS International Senior Steel Market Analyst, specialising in the stainless steel market. Welcome back to the Market in Minutes podcast. It's great to have you on.
Morning. Thank you for inviting me back.
No problem. No, it's great to share that insight. We do these monthly Marketing Minutes podcasts, which give a snapshot of a region and a particular market each month. And clearly, this month we'll be focusing on Europe's stainless steel market and drawing on research that was compiled for the Stainless Steel Review, which MEPS produces on a monthly basis, providing steel market commentary, steel prices, of course, and a 12-month price forecast for various products across the region. Michelle, we do sort of follow quite a regimented process with the Market in Minutes podcast, giving a bit of a snapshot. So if we can start with the supply situation in Europe, it's clear that CBAM and the impending changes to the tariff rate quotas in Europe are having a distinct effect on the market. Can you sort of summarise that and give us a bit of an overview of the supply situation as it is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen obviously over the last 6, 7, 8 months really is the switch from import to domestic buying amongst many of our research partners who we speak to. Obviously, the introduction of CBAM from January this year was quite a big challenge for a lot of our research partners who do buy from imports. Some of them have cut back from imports altogether. Some of them have switched the countries that they're importing from. For example, from Taiwan to maybe countries like South Korea or Vietnam that have a lower CBAM default value. So that's kind of impact we've seen on the import side. So the imports you can see from the the import data have significantly dropped, especially for cold rolled flat products coming into Europe. They've decreased significantly, especially in Q1 and Q2 this year. At the same time, the European mills have obviously seen a corresponding increase in demand coming through from those switching back to domestic supply, trying to secure local supply. So the European mills have benefited from that. Obviously, their order books have been quite good. And what we're seeing now, actually, I mean, we're nearly half a year in now, and what we're seeing is that the domestic ordering is starting to taper off again. It's starting to slow. A lot of the material ordered earlier in the year is now starting to be delivered. The inventories are starting to go up in Europe amongst the stockists and distributors from this new material. So we are starting to see buyers cut back again. So the mill delivery lead times have the extending of the mill delivery lead times in Europe has started to slow now. But inventories are obviously have been growing, so we do still quite have a lot of stock in the market at the minute.
Okay, so I guess flipping over to the other essential element that's determinant of those steel prices, it seems that most global steel markets have been defined recently by low levels of demand for some time. What is stainless steel demand in Europe like, and how is that supply situation serving what demand does exist?
Yeah, I mean demand has been fairly consistent really, I guess, across the months. It's running steady at a fairly tepid level. I don't think many people have massive complaints about the level of demand. Just that it could be better. They would like it to be better. It has started slow. We did speak to people certainly in May that said that they felt that the summer slowdown had already started. We usually see a traditionally quiet period in the summer months anyway, and people felt that that may have already started to happen in May. I guess we have a couple of things that may be causing that. One, people will have ordered, I guess, more material earlier in the year because of the trade changes. We had the start of the conflict in Iran, and we did see a pickup in purchasing around that time as people tried to secure material that in case you know, there was big disruption from that. And I guess now we're starting to see the demand start to weaken as we head to the summer months. So yeah, I mean it's fairly quiet across the whole of Europe. I guess country specific wise, I would say that the UK is maybe falling behind other European countries. We have countries like maybe Norway who are doing a little bit better. But generally across the whole of the region, demand is fairly weak. You know, it's tepid. Um, we've got, I guess, some key industries that are still really quiet. Construction, white goods. You know, demand from those sectors is still at quite a low level. Um, we did have some research partners comment that automotive demand had picked up a little bit last month, and they thought that was, you know, was quite nice. And then I guess looking at the positive side on demand, you know, we've got good activity levels in anything for the defence sector. We've got fairly good levels for the data centre rollout, which is happening across Europe. So we do have some, you know, some pockets of good demand. Aerospace obviously is one that seems to have held up really well throughout, to be honest. So we do have some pockets of good, but we've still got some really key sectors that are still at quite a low level that are just holding it back.
Yeah,
Obviously, innovation and investment are, you know, a really big thing for big projects, and it's the big projects that are missing from the markets right now. We've got a lot of, you know, there's still quite a bit of day-to-day activity, but the big projects are missing from the market.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that data center activity. I know it's something that you've spoken about in recent weeks as being a real strong point. You know, how much demand that actually delivers is up for debate, I suppose. But it's been a focus of those stainless steel review articles, hasn't it, in recent weeks?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of people involved in it. There's quite a lot of parts and products. There's obviously racking systems. There's storage drawers. There's you know, there's the cabling networks that go into them. The cooling systems obviously are a massive part. They need a lot of cooling systems. You know, for the heat that these centres generate. So yeah, there's I guess several different products going into them, but some of it's stainless steel, and yeah, for those that are involved in that sector, it's creating, you know, some additional project work.
Great stuff. Good news for those suppliers. So taking into account what you've just told us about supply and demand in the European stainless steel sector, what trends are we seeing in the prices right now?
Okay, so obviously since the start of the year, prices have been going upwards. They've been following, I guess, what's been happening with supply, with the imports starting to drop, the European mill bookings starting to go up. The European mills have obviously been pushing the prices up. Um, in response to this, they've had 6 months of month-on-month increases. Um, in May, the pricing level across most of Europe or Northern Europe, started to get up to that €2.70 a kilo for the 304 cold rolled coil, um, which is the highest point it's been for a couple of years. 2004, May 2004 maybe. So we have seen some fairly decent increases, and I mean that's over 320 to €330 a tonne since the start of the year. So a good increase in pricing. We did see, however, in last month's research that the pricing increases had started to slow. So, you know, where we were getting quite big 78 to €100 month on month increases, We're now looking at maybe 30 to 40 euro increases. So you can really see that slowdown starting to happen. A lot of people that we spoke to think that prices are starting to peak. So we're probably not going to see those big increases going forward into the next few months now. Obviously, I'll come back to that a little bit more as we head into the outlook. But I think it's safe to say that the mills have been, I guess, a lot of them saying to their customers that they were hoping to reach this €3 a kilo level. And I think it's safe to say that most people don't think that's achievable now. The opportunity is probably gone for that, and prices are starting to obviously stabilise with the lower summer demand. I mean that's for the flat products. For the long products, we have seen some, I guess, less significant increases, but obviously the difference with the long products is that we haven't seen that sharp drop off in imports yet, because even with the CBAM cost, it's not enough for the difference to close the gap between the import and the domestic pricing. So even with that CBAM cost, there's still a significant gap. However, there is potential that we may see some strengthening on the long side a bit later in the year, as maybe the reduced quotas start to have an impact after the summer.
Absolutely. Well, you're alluding to it already, Michelle, I guess, in those comments. But if we could sort of take a step forward and just give, to summarise the section, a bit of an outlook for Europe's stainless steel sector, it'd be great to hear the direction of travel that MEPS predicts for the months ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess demand, we're not expecting any changes really in the level of demand for the rest of the year. We're expecting that to continue at a fairly similar level. I guess a slight slowdown over the summer, and then back to the volumes that people have been seeing for the second half of the year. From a pricing perspective, I guess I did kind of allude to it a little bit there. We're expecting, we maybe might see a little bit of an increase this month as the prices start to peak, and then we'll see prices start to stabilise over the summer months, July and August. And then we're actually forecasting for them to start decreasing later in the year, as the supply chains obviously adjust, and because there just isn't the demand to keep these higher pricing levels. So that's for the flat products. Long products, we could see a bit more strengthening behind those prices, because there could be some changes to the imports for that particular products later in the year, although the stocks across Europe are quite high. So that's going to have to be worked through the system first, I think, before the European longs will be able to get any significant increases. UK, that may be a slightly different scenario that we see, because on the flat product side, we expect that to have a very similar trend to the pricing that we're going to forecast for the rest of Europe, because there are no changes to the trade import quotas for the flat product. But for the long products, we could possibly see a spike in prices in the UK market, as the UK safeguard quota replacements come in July, which are now going to include stainless longs, which is going to be quite a big change for the UK market, having never really had any protection on the stainless longs. And obviously we've seen quite a lot of backlash from the UK sector, from the distributors, manufacturers, on these quotas. But if they go ahead as expected from July 1st, then we could see a spike in prices in the UK as a result of the massively reduced imports that are going to be able to come in duty free.
Yeah, so as we'd anticipate, I guess, It's policy, trade policy that might determine a lot of these price movements in the months ahead. It's quite an interesting outlook, really, isn't it?
Yes, certainly, and I mean it is all trade policy driven. I mean, it's never been, I guess, as important as what it is now and having the effect. Demand is a secondary consideration for everything that's happening at the minute. Obviously, we have got some raw material strengthening in there as well that's going to, at least maintain some of the pricing levels in the short term. 316 prices could benefit more from the raw material movements at the moment. So whereas we're forecasting a smaller increase this month in the 304, we could see a larger increase in the 316 because of the moly and nickel elements in there. But yeah, I mean it's going to be an interesting year really to see how all these different trade policies um, play out in the marketplace, and how companies are going to adjust and adapt to them to maintain their position in the market and profitability.
Absolutely. Well, the best way people can keep in touch with those market changes, and certainly the way those influence the stainless steel market price in Europe, is to keep in touch with the Stainless Steel Review, and perhaps even subscribe to the notifications from our website. Michelle, always a handy extra as well. But listen, we'll leave it there. Thanks ever so much for joining me today. It's great to have you back on Marketing Minutes. And yeah, keep up the good work. We're keeping people informed, aren't we?
We are.
That's the
Thank
main
you
thing.
for having me.
Thank you very much, Michelle.